If you don't mind, I said I wanted to talk Berettas for a little bit. You, I believe, own now a car that we listed on Bring a Trailer a while ago, Chevy Beretta, but it was a car that you drove in period and then you won on the site. Isn't that correct? I loved that car, by the way. And that seller had a bunch of awesome cars on the site.
Yeah. The one you're talking about was a wild story. And it's kind of weaves in a bunch of issues with auctions and cars. It's hard to know what it is.
Yeah.
And
This is the number one car, right? Big number one on the door and one that you drove in period. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah.
He
Okay.
tried to sell it before, and it was painted like an ICI, the Trans Am car. And the reason was, so to go back, I remember, so I had one of those cars, and then the guy who owned the team had the other car. And so this car shows up, and it's on Facebook. Someone says, "Hey, this guy just bought your championship car." And I'm like, no, it's not. And I could tell instantly the body wasn't right. And so I knew what it was. It was a show car, so forth. So he ends up buying this car. And I kept hearing from people, so-and-so has your car. I said, yeah, he actually doesn't. And so he finally calls me, Tommy Thompson. And he says, I hear a lot of different stuff about this car. I said, you want the good news or the bad news? He said, well, both. I said, the good news is I think it's a pretty cool car. The bad news is it isn't what you think it is. You think it's a Trans Am championship car, and it's not. He said, well, GM sold it to me, saying, I said, well, GM didn't know.
Oof, that's tough.
So there was a lawsuit over that, I believe. He bought it at, it was during the bankruptcy, and they were sending cars to Barrett Jackson and some of these places. He bought the car.
And they kind of didn't know what they had, or what's the story there? Unclear, sitting in some back storeroom or something like that?
Yeah, basically, when we won the championship that year, the next year when we moved to Trans Am, they needed show cars, so they rebodied them, which was stupid. They could have just painted them. They rebodied them, so that's why I could tell immediately the body wasn't right. And so I knew I'd follow those cars, so I'm pretty sure what it was. And then the next year they painted it the yellow, blue, and white, and so it's sitting in one of their warehouses or museums, and it's probably got a board in front of it saying "Championship Car ICI."
Yep.
So they didn't know. The guy that cleaned out the warehouse is just going off the sign. And so he went back to him and said, this isn't what you, they gave him all of his money back and let him keep the car to avoid a lawsuit.
Wow.
So then he tried to sell it that way and it didn't go anywhere. And then I told him, I said, you need to put it back to how it was in GTU. And he went most of the way. He painted it the right way and he put the clear spoiler on the back, but he didn't
love that spoiler. That spoiler is so awesome on the back.
He didn't change the body, partially because they don't exist. I have the only existing body for that car and the mold. So eventually I haven't even put it back yet. So at some point that's a future project to get that car perfect, period, correct for the GTU car.
And when are you buying your Beretta street car? Is that going to be your fourth Beretta? You're getting one of those too?
It's funny you say that because there are, I don't have to tell you, there are people that live and breathe those things.
Absolutely, there are. Yeah,
I saw one and it brought damn good money. It was almost too nice a car, and I'm like, oh, yeah. I said that's the one to have, but I wasn't planning on spending that kind of money.
Yeah, no, maybe you don't need 4 Berettas. But yeah, they used to be kind of, the street cars used to be kind of the butt of the joke, but now people, in this Radwood era, people love those cars.
Yeah.
So
and the GTU was had the special wheels, a little bit different paint on it, and so forth. And that's what's so weird about the Trans Am car in silhouette cars. To have a Beretta, and then Bob Riley did that car. So it was kind of the second generation Riley Trans Am car. And I see pictures of that thing now, and I'm like, that thing looks like a funny car. I sat almost in the middle of the car.
Totally.
And we had ourselves totally convinced, because we had to argue it to the rules people all the time. This is totally, the silhouette's exactly the same as a Beretta. And we believed it, and now I look at it, I'm like, wow, that thing was stretched every which way. And it was
they're all swoopy and sexy. They look great. Man,
True
that's
story.
Hilarious.